Hi guys, and welcome to episode 26 of On the DL. Dakota and Lan joining you today. And today we're going to talk about the scales and not the kitchen kind. We are covering the bathroom scales. This, I feel like it affects different people differently. It can have a really positive effect, a really negative effect. I think it depends on who you are, where you're at in your fitness journey, and what you obviously place importance on. This is something that Lan and I, it affects a lot of our clients, yeah?
Completely, yeah. For the vast majority of my clients in non-lockdown times, I don't get them to weigh themselves. I just use skin folds as a measure because they give more feedback and more information. So even if there's a fluctuation, we can explain why it's happening. Whereas with the scales, it's a bit of a guessing game, which is, I think, why it can be positive or negative depending on how you perceive the information. So, if you can jump on the scales, see a number, understand that number is just a piece of a very, very big puzzle, jump off and then get on with your day without thinking of the scales again, then you're probably okay to be using the scales as a guide. They can give you information if you take enough readings to tell you about a trend, but they're not telling you what's going on in terms of how much fluid you're carrying. They're not telling you how much body fat, how much lean mass, so on and so forth.
It's hard though, because if you weigh in every day and you have, that can also lead to an obsessive nature around that action. Obviously, you're a lot more stressed sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't matter at all, and other times you weigh yourself and it really kills you. It's like it's hard in this industry because to gain muscle, to lose weight, to make a change in your body, to get stronger, there has to be some kind of metrics that you do follow. There has to be something that you can track to obviously dictate your progress. And like you said, scales is definitely not the first choice, but they're needed at some point.
Especially with the online world, right? Like, how else are you going to get people to measure? It's fine when we can see you in person. We can do skin folds. When we can't see you in person, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to talk someone off a ledge in person than it is over the phone.
It's very, very true, Dak. Very, very true. It's because we can supply more information in a better context when you're in front of us, particularly with online coaching. The bad weigh-in might be on day 1 of the week and your check-in might be on day 7. So by the time you've gotten to day 7, it's already dictated that you've had 5 crappy days because every time you've stepped on the scales, you've felt angry about it. So you've made bad choices or you've restricted or you've done all of these things to try and compensate for what you're seeing and it's landed you backwards in your other results. It's a metric that, when taken out of context, can be really detrimental. Really, really detrimental.
Yeah. And that's where the education comes in. I mean, hopefully, if you do have a coach, they're taking the time to educate you in what can affect the scale. Hopefully that relationship is there and you're learning as you go, because I think obviously the less education you have and you step on the scale and you're like, cool, this is what I weigh. I'm a kilo heavier than yesterday. I've put on a kilo of body fat. And it's like, okay, well, no, because that can't happen.
And
it's about having that. It's impossible. It's the education, it's like even simple shit like, oh, I'm bloated, I'm going to stand on the scale, I'm heavier, I must be fatter. It's like, hold on a minute, do you expect to be bloated and not be heavier at all? Like, to have that reaction one way but not a reaction another?
It's like, okay, you're bloated, what's causing the bloating? Okay, I haven't been to the toilet in 2 days, or I'm due for my period, so I'm holding a bunch of fluid and I'm inflamed. Okay, fluid has a weight, so does 2 days worth of stools. That will probably show up on my scales. But if you don't, don't take a second to logically process it, which most people don't, because we jump on the scales, we see the number and then we've made up our mind how the day is going to go, then we run into issues. And even when you do understand it, the emotional attachment, if it's strong enough, can overwhelm that. So we have, you and I are very lucky. We have a lot of very educated clients and people who want to learn about this sort of thing. And we will talk them through it, or we'll do something like when I get clients that aren't great with their emotional response to the scales, what I'll often get them to do is weigh themselves every day. But if their scale weight goes up, they have to list 3 things that could potentially have affected that scale weight, right?
Yeah.
So that they can start to have a relationship with, okay, this isn't actual body fat that's fluctuating. This is because I had a high carb, high salt meal yesterday. 2 days from now, that'll be gone and I'll be back to where I was.
Yeah.
Having that building that relationship with scales can work really, really well. But let's face it, we've had the scales in our lives since we were quite young, right? So if we've had a negative relationship with the scales for 30 years, doing this exercise for a month or a week or whatever
needs more time.
Highly unlikely to benefit you, right? And there's the other extreme that I do with a lot of my clients, which is taking them off the scales altogether. But that can also create this fear relationship with the scales when they go to get on it. And it is a catch-22.
It's a fine line, hey, because you want to, I mean, everyone's different and every approach should be different. And it's like, okay, we've got a fear of the scales. Let's just take them away. But then it's like, well, when do you reintroduce them? And what if, because it's like, if you have a fear of something or there's a phobia of something, you shouldn't just get rid of it. It's like bloody, if I can't just have one Tim Tam, I'll eat the whole packet. And it's like, I just won't buy them. And it's like, that doesn't help you control yourself around Tim Tams. It's just, they're not there now. And it's just like the scale, I think not weighing at all is a really good starting point to show you that, okay, sweet, that little number doesn't actually matter in my life. It shouldn't dictate my happiness, But
that's right.
I think there needs to be more work later on.
That's exactly right. There has to be, you have to be able to have a relationship with the scales where they don't have power over you instantaneously, because the reality is you're going to have to jump on the scale at some point in your life, whether it's you've gone to hospital for a procedure or, it could be anything. And if that number still has the power to affect you negatively, it's going to affect you whatever the context is, whether you're jumping on it for a positive or a negative reason, it's going to have the power to affect you. So building that relationship is really important, but how you go about it depends on the individual. There's also times at which the scales shouldn't matter, right? If you're in maintenance, why are you getting on the scales every day?
What's the point? Does it need to be every day, or can you just get away with it once a week, or once a month? What's the point? What's the point behind it?
Exactly right. And think of it this way, right? So if you're theoretically in maintenance and you jump on the scales and your scales have actually gone up, and you know that means that it's probably taken you out of maintenance, you can then jump on the scales every day for a week and track your calories to have a look and adjust and make sure it's where it needs to be, and then you can continue to go without weighing again. But it's really about weighing up the pros and the cons of it in that current circumstance and then deciding the best way to go. If you're stressed as hell and hating yourself at the moment, jumping on the scales every day is not going to make you feel better.
No, and the shit thing is that every approach has to be different, and some people aren't in a position to weigh themselves every day. And I mean, I was having a conversation yesterday with a client. She told me about this news article, and it was like this woman who said, the best thing that she did was eat 3,000 calories a day and then diet down and did a bodybuilder comp. And I was like, okay, cool, that's great for her. And I mean, the overall concept that she was pushing is great. Obviously, eat more food, diet down, eat more food, but the main thing that I wanted to cover on is that you need, the client I was talking to doesn't like to weigh herself. She won't ever. And I'm like, so for instance, if you have such a hard time with the scale, you cannot weigh in, like that is a real stigma, like you cannot do it. Do you think you're in a really good position to diet? Do you think, like, has anybody ever asked that, do people dive that far in? Like, and I hope coaches do, but like that, you can lose weight without touching a scale, a food scale or a weight scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there has to be tracking of some form in terms of the food to be able to lose weight, because we know that we have to be in a calorie deficit. So we're not saying you can go off and eat whatever you want and lose weight. We're saying that there are, you can do a handful or a cup or a palm-sized piece of this or da-da-da-da-da. And that will still give you an average intake that you can measure regardless of the fact that you're not actually weighing or tracking it. But when it comes to scales, using your client as an example, Dak, if someone is so fearful of the scales that they cannot get on them, there is an underlying issue. And that underlying issue is usually something very deep-seated and rooted early on. They've at some point in their life been made to feel like their value associates with the number on the scale, and now they're finding it difficult to dissociate from that. Or in terms of eating disorders, for instance, it becomes almost an achievement to see the scales drop. So when the scales are dropping, it's this positive feedback that they get, and it becomes so obsessive or such a... That's it, that it's really damaging. And then trying to rectify that, yes, we need to get them more comfortable with the scales, but we can't expect to do that in 5 minutes, right?
No,
Psychological.
That's the fine line.
The psychological side of jumping on the scales is by far the most difficult component. People who can jump on the scales, see it as data, and then not think about it again for the rest of the day. There's no issue with those people jumping on the scales every day or not jumping on the scales at all. I personally, I don't weigh myself unless I'm cutting or something along those lines, which very, very rarely happens for me these days unless I'm doing a promo shoot or something like that. I really won't cut these days. And I find I'm more comfortable not getting on the scales because it's just one less thing to do in the day, right? It means that if I forget to do it in the morning, I'm not then thinking, oh, shit, that's going to affect this for the week. It's just one less thing. I think you're the same, aren't you? When you don't have to be on the scales daily, you find it alleviates some pressure off of you, right?
Yeah, like I definitely go through phases, and I think it honestly doesn't really have anything to do with the scales. Like I definitely, when I'm focusing on my body fat percentage and, my strength and my lean mass, like I can, get on the scale once a month and chuck it in and work it out and it's fine. And I think when I'm at a low point, maybe I'm stressed, overworked, maybe I haven't done anything for myself, or, I'm unhappy, or I just, then I obviously, oh, sweet, time for a cut. And then I think that negative energy from the other areas of my life comes into it. Then I obviously, with the cut comes the weighing in. Then I think that kind of drives the negative side effect from the scales. I don't think it's the scales. I think it's just the, okay, I'm stressed. I don't have any control right now, or I feel overwhelmed. Let's focus on this one thing that I can really focus on and control. And obviously when that doesn't go down, I'm like, well, fuck me.
Absolutely. And, we've all been through it where the scales haven't moved when they were meant to. And sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes it's that we were supposed to be in a deficit and we actually weren't because there was more off-plan eating or less activity or da-da-da-da. And in those cases, we just say que sera, energy in versus energy out. Didn't quite work out the way. And then we go with it. When, however, the scales move with no logical explanation behind it, it can be much more difficult and much more triggering. But we've got to remember that energy balance is not the only thing that factors into this equation, and I think it's a topic that is highly oversimplified in social media. It's that whole if your energy in is less than your energy out, you will lose weight. Yes, that's the case 90% of the time. 90% of the time, if you're in a deficit, and a true deficit, you will lose weight. But women have a menstrual cycle. That menstrual cycle means that there are parts of our month where we are probably going to sit a kilo or two higher on the scales, and it has nothing to do with your body fat, guys. Fluid retention, yes. Lazy bowel because progesterone's high, yes. We're, not moving our bowel as regularly. All of these things play in. None of them are body fat yet. When we step on the scales and see the scales have gone up,
that's what we see it as.
Instantaneous failure. Also, if we are particularly stressed out and we try and put our body in a deficit, the body will fight back, guys, because not every time is a good time to go into a deficit, and we've forgotten that. We really have. I've had competitors that have tried to get into comp shape during breakups or during, big life-changing events, which is a terrible, terrible idea. And usually I've told them it's a terrible idea, but they've decided to continue anyway. And they just don't get into the condition that they want to be in. And then they feel disappointed in themselves, even though what really is going on is your body is saying, I need all of that energy for other things. Right now, I need all of this energy for more important things. I can come back to competing some other day. Use that time to thrive. Use that time to feed up, pack on muscle mass, get a really good physique going, and then cut when you're in a better position.
It's just a great distraction, really.
We when think you go through
a stressful period, and like I said, that's really, when you don't have an area, or you have an area of your life where you don't agree with, but you can't really change anything. You go, okay, well, I'll focus on myself. I'll focus on making myself look better, and that will make me happy for the interim. But unfortunately, like you said, the stress levels sometimes don't allow that to happen, but it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, apart from trying to cut when you shouldn't, really.
Exactly. Trying to do too much at a bad time. I think there's probably 90% of the people that come to see you and I are wanting to cut before they've even asked us anything about their basic metabolism, right? So we spend a lot of time, both of us, explaining to people that if you are eating 1,200 calories right now, we're not cutting you. We don't have anything to cut.
Where are you going to cut? Where are you going to cut?
We need to reestablish positive food relationships, positive relationships with exercise. We need to get you into a place where your metabolism is strong and working for you rather than working against you. Then we can cut you. The problem is, apart from the fact that people want to cut from any level, they also want to cut too frequently, and they want to stay leaner than their body naturally allows. Everyone has a point at which they naturally sit fairly well, right? So some people just naturally run lean, some people don't naturally run lean. And unfortunately, if you don't naturally run lean and you're trying to run lean all the time, something's going to give. Your menstrual cycle might disappear if you're a female. You might not respond well to stress. You might not recover well from training. There's all these different things that can happen. But they will happen because you're trying to force your body to do something that it's not built to do long term. It can achieve it short term, but it might not be able to do that long term. The problem there is, if we're cutting so frequently, we just end up back at that 1,200 calories that we started at, and then we've got nowhere to go again. And then the scale weight's obviously not going to move, because how can it move any lower? How can we... How can we get it to move? So all of these things sort of revolve around, I think because the only consistent way of measuring your progress yourself really has been scale weight, right?
Yeah, I think definitely taking the time, like if health and fitness is something that you really do want to look into, you know, you want to start putting effort into your nutrition, or you want to start training and building some muscle or losing some fat, like at least take the time to, you know, look into maybe getting a good coach that can educate you in regards to that area, or doing, you know, getting the education yourself, like looking up you know, ways what how the body works in terms of, you know, your menstrual cycle, you know, with things that can affect scale weight.
And by this,
you know,
we do not mean social media. Social media
no,
is not
no.
a reliable source of information.
No, definitely not TikTok or social media. Like looking up how the body scientifically works, what can affect the scale weight, and also other areas that you can track progress. Like if your goal is to put on size, then you're putting on size. Putting on size means getting bigger. Getting bigger means getting heavier. So if, you know, that's seen as a positive. If you're someone who wants to lose weight and you actually have weight to lose, but you cannot step on that scale, then there's a lot of work that you need to do before you can really go, okay, sweet, now I'm going to lose weight. Like I think that's the biggest thing with the scale, is that, you know, like you said, some people can use it as a good motivator, and some people aren't in a position to use it at all.
Yeah. What I say to my clients is, if you're stepping on the scales 7 days, 7 days a week, and 5 days out of 7 you're stepping off of them unhappy, you shouldn't be weighing yourself. If you're stepping on the scales 7 days a week and occasionally you have a blip where you kind of like, oh, this is not great. All right, you're probably handling it quite well. But if it's dictating that you have 5 crappy days out of 7, get off the scales. What the hell's the point? Like, even if you are losing weight.
Good. Data's good. Data's great, but data shouldn't affect your emotions. Like, it shouldn't make you sad. Like, I had a client who, so she used to weigh in one day a week, and then I found out she had a secret sheet that she would record. She would record her weight, she'd record her waist measurement, she'd record all of these metrics, and I was like, babe, and she had an addictive personality. And I was like, okay, I'm going to need you to delete it. I'm going to need to see proof that it's deleted, because it sent her backwards. So, you know, she was someone who was very triggered by the scale, and every week we would chat through, okay, this is why this happened, and this affects this, and we were slowly educating, and then she took it a little too far, and it took her right back to the start. So like working on yourself, just like changing your habits, your mental aspect, you know, the scales is something that is the mental aspect, and it needs to be continuously worked on.
Completely it does, yeah, because you can go through cycles where you handle it really well, and then cycles where you don't, and that can come down to the stress levels in your normal day-to-day life, right? Like if everything's really tough at the moment, then you're probably going to look at the scale weight more negatively no matter what's coming up, good, bad, or otherwise. Like I say to a lot of my clients, there's only one acceptable number that's going to come up on that scale for you, right? So the 3 options are: you've gone up and you're really unhappy about it, you haven't gone down enough and you're really unhappy about it, or you've gone down enough. So there's a 1 in 3 chance that you're going to be happy, and that's even. And that's even if you have a good relationship with the scales, right? So there's just so many potential detrimental effects of jumping on the scale too often if you're not ready for it. And you've got to learn why you're being triggered. Because if you can get off those scales and go through the logical process and say, this is why those scales are going up, it could be really beneficial for you. It can actually teach you something and empower you to see that literally what the scales are measuring is your relationship with gravity. That is it. That is literally all it's measuring.
Literally it. Yeah.
That's it.
But like, so, you know, if you're someone, like you said, you know, that does literally 5 out of 7 days it makes you feel like shit, don't be afraid to seek help either, you know.
Completely.
Even if you do have a coach, or if you're a coach and you have clients who just, it really sends them in a downward spiral, like seek someone who knows a little bit about it. You know, there's coaching, and you can be a fantastic nutritionist, you can be an amazing dietitian, you could cut everyone down and you nail it, but that aspect of it might be just a little bit too difficult, and it's good to seek help with people who actually know, okay, like they can help the person get to a point where they can weigh in and it doesn't affect their life.
Don't overreach as a coach, right? Like you don't have to be great at everything as a coach. You have to be a great coach. That's your job. Be a great coach. Being a great coach sometimes means knowing when to refer on to a psychologist or a health psychologist or someone along those lines that's going to give your client much more bang for the buck than if they just keep banging their head against a brick wall with the same old with the scales. If the relationship with the scales is completely emotional, if it's tied into you being picked on as a kid because you were overweight, or if it's tied into a negative relationship that you had with a partner who always told you that you needed to lose some, or if someone always pinched your belly when you were growing up, or something along those lines, a nutritionist or a coach is unlikely going to be able to fix that for you. They can probably, that's it, they can probably help you to understand it better, but until you resolve the underlying issue, you're probably not going to get past it. So a good coach will always know when they've reached, when they need to outsource, when they need to reach out to someone else to help the client get where they actually need to go, rather than just taking money off of someone to tell them the same thing that you told them the last 7 weeks about this is what it is. If you have explained to your client 7 times that they've put on lean mass and that's why the scales are going up, and they're still having an emotional reaction to the scale, it's not because they don't understand that their lean mass is going up.
They just can't
understand that. They just can't have a positive association with that. So it's a very triggering topic for a lot of people, this one, and you really need to think about the why behind getting on the scales. If there's not a good reason to be getting on the scales and you are still obsessively doing it every day, or like your client, if it's the other way around where you cannot step on those scales because you are so terrified of what you're going to see, then it's a psychological issue and it needs to be treated as one. You can't treat a psychological issue with diet, and we need to stop trying. We tend to treat out of scope too often. I've worked in the industry I've been a registered nutritionist for 16 years now. In my entire degree, we did 6 months of psychology and it barely touched on anything, right? I don't feel qualified to be giving out psychological advice. If you've done a 12-week course and ticked the basic boxes and you're now trying to get someone through something that happened to them that was traumatic as a kid, don't do it. It's only going to put them in a worse position. We're not psychologists. We're not.
We're mild therapists. We're involuntary therapists. But
that's right.
There's like you said, you know, a lot of the emotional stuff is stuff that we're not working through, and definitely putting that on a coach that isn't qualified in that field. You're both just going to butt heads. So I definitely think that if that is an area that is really affecting your day-to-day and there's more negative experience than positive, then it's something that definitely needs to be worked on. A deficit or a diet isn't going to do that. It's probably going to exacerbate it. And also, if you're a client or you're getting a coach and you're starting out with a coach and they ask you to do things that you think are going to make your relationship with the scale worse, making your relationship with your food worse, maybe you had a past eating disorder or, you know, something like that, like speak up and be honest. At the end of the day, you're a team. A client and a coach are a team. You work together to get the result that you both desire. You know, you don't want to send somebody back and spiral them years past for you know, a couple of bucks.
Exactly right. Yeah, and we're here encouraging coaches to listen to this, because you and I both refer on. We both refer on because we know it's in the best interest of the patient or the client, not because it's in the best interest of our pocket, right? Like, if you don't care about your clients and you're in the healthcare industry, get out now. It's really not the industry for you. You need to have a level of care to be in this industry and be good at what you do, and that has to include knowing when to refer out. When you're a personal trainer and someone has an injury, you're not going to try and apply physiotherapy that you have no idea about.
No,
you know,
you refer out.
You're going to send them to see a physio. Exactly the same thing with food and psychology. Food, nutrition, fantastic. It can be incredibly powerful, and it can affect your emotions. If you're eating well, you're going to have a healthy gut microbiome. Healthy gut microbiome, more happy hormones, you know, better mental health in general. But it's not going to resolve trauma. It's not going to resolve things that are bigger than that. So that's, you know, having that ability to recognize and refer on is incredibly powerful. And trust me when I say your clients will be so grateful for it. You will retain more clients by understanding your limitations than you ever will trying to work outside of them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and, you know, if you're someone who struggles in this area, you know, you're afraid of the scale, you've thrown the scale out, or if you're someone who has a really good relationship with the scale and, you know, this is an area that you've really, you know, worked on yourself really hard, you know, definitely let us know. You know, we'd love to hear about your journey in this area, because it is still to this day a huge issue that we're trying to fight and obviously work on, and everyone's working on it to some level. So I hope you guys have really got something from this episode. I think this is a really important one. If you know, struggle in this area, definitely comment below. Definitely feel free to message us, like, share, comment, all of that crap. But thank you very much for watching, and I hope you took something away from today.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next episode.